Well, hello. Every gal needs a cowboy hat.
Scanning the room, you look for a familiar face. Everyone is a stranger. Your heart's racing, you feel nauseous. New plan. You meet 4 new people. Okay, 3. 2? You can handle 2. And then you think, I hate this. This just feels so fake. And before you talk to even 1 new person, you're looking for the nearest exit.
Okay. Crazy. Yo, who invited this chick?
My heart races when I walk into a room full of strangers too. Except it's not anxiety, it's excitement. I'm not thinking networking quota. I'm thinking, look at all these stories. And I get so pumped about talking to people that I don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hello. Oh my goodness. Stories. The power is in the stories. Now, I do work mostly in the world of manufacturing, and many of the people there find it difficult to sometimes see the value in the stories, and then find it even more difficult to then find ways to share them. That's where I come in. My name is Gail Robertson, and I am Chief Curiosity Officer with GailNow. And I help manufacturers tell their stories when I use my 3-step process to sign up, suit up, and show up. And today we are going to be learning more about the power of showing up, the power of showing up through stories, the power of showing up through your personal brand. And my guest today is someone that I've got to know through networking online, through word of mouth, through following him on social media. And I tell you, my curious mind has been nurtured by listening to his podcast as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you now to Ben Baker's in the house.
Well, hello, Gail. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. And thanks for everybody who showed up live. And people are going to listen to this later. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
We are. That is for sure. And learn so much. And we will, for anybody tuned in, I would encourage you to drop in the comments where you're from. If you have any questions, if you want to send out some high fives to Ben Baker today, because Ben, you are, to me, you're a poster child too for what I would say is around my brand, which is showing up. You don't only show up, but you help other people show up through the magical world of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to have you maybe just sort of talk a little bit about your business before we jump into some of the questions and the usual discussions around how some of the listeners today can benefit from what you're going to be sharing, because I know that when you start to tell your story, your own personal branded story, that's where the magic can happen.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, I love storytelling. I've been a storyteller since I was a kid. I was lucky enough to grow up with uncles that were in the professional theater business, that were the razzmatazz guys that stood on stage and got you to buy those webinar series. They worked for all the big names, and they were the guys that flew into town and gave you that half-day workshop and webinar, or left there was live with 1,000 people in the audience, got the audience all pumped up to buy this $2,500, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 package. And those are the guys I learned from, from the days, is how to get up on stage, how to own a room, how to use pace, how to use tone, how to speak louder, how to speak softer, and how to get an audience to sit there and go, I'm bought in. I'm drinking the mother's milk. I get it. And I understand how this is going to help me and my life be better. And That's what I learned from very early on. But today, I work with companies not on the external marketing, not on talking to your clients, but talking to your internal clients. How do you get people inside your office to understand who you are, what you do, why you do it, why they matter, and how they help you be successful and achieve your goals? And we work with two different groups. We work with companies 25 to 100 million dollars. And what we do is we work with those companies to build the strategy, to sit there and say, okay, what are the holes in your dike? Where are the challenges that you're facing in terms of communication? Let's understand your company, understand where your challenges are, and enable you to fix them. In the large to enterprise level companies, the 1,000 employees and above, the $100 million and above companies, we create branded internal private podcasts that enable them to talk asynchronously throughout the organization, understand each other, and align people to mission, vision, and values throughout the company. So we work with two different groups in two different ways based on what their particular needs are.
Well, that is amazing. And I'm back to you mentioning about your uncles. And you know what? My background was actually in theater as well when I was growing up. And you know, I was in theater groups, and now my son is taking theater at university and has been involved in acting since childhood. And it really does, you know, when you can get out and act on stage, that's where you can really learn so much about communication and storytelling.
Absolutely. I think every person growing up somewhere should take an improv class. Even if it's just a 6 or 8 week class, or just a workshop somewhere, everybody should take an improv class to be able to sit there and say, okay, in any situation, I can think on my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sit there and say, you know what? Speaking is not such a scary thing. And whether you're doing like this on a webinar or on a podcast, you're in a room, like, in your introduction, where people walk into a room and they sit there, go, oh my God, all these people, how do I approach people? Or being able to present within a company, being able to tell your story effectively. First of all, knowing who you are, what your value is, what your personal values are, and your personal brand, and being able to articulate that to others so people listen, understand, and value you is critical.
And, you know, I want to share this because I think some people look even what I do, because I come on live and, you know, I do love doing this. But before I come on, often I am nervous because I'm thinking, you know, because one time I came on and I had my mic on mute and I'm talking away. Oh, got to turn it back on. One time, you know, we had some other tech issues. One time, one of my guests was late. I had like almost up to like the top of the hour. And I thought, what if I have to go live on my own? Like, all of these things happen. But the more that you do something, the more that you repeat something, it does get easier. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's not something that you just wake up and this is like, oh yeah, I come on my live show and it's easy. It's not. It does take some work. It takes some practice. And, you know, my 3 step is sign up, suit up, and show up. So a lot of it's mindset, and then it's research and preparation. So,
well, let's look at it this way from an analogy that people can understand. Nobody gets out of bed and runs 10 miles when they've never run before. Nobody lifts 300 pounds the first day they've been in a gym. Nobody goes, and drives Le Mans right after they get their driver's license. It all is a muscle. They're all muscles. And the more we practice and the more we use our muscles, the more we exercise our muscles, and the more we stretch our muscles, the better off we become. I mean, I write every single day. Every single day I write something. It's usually either an article, notes for a book, thoughts process. I post on LinkedIn every single day. But it's just so I can sit there and say, okay, keep the muscle working. The same thing is with podcasting. The same thing is with presenting. The more we do it, the more comfortable we become. And the more, when things do go wrong, because things will go wrong. The mic will turn off, the lights won't go on, video might have some glitches. You can adapt. And the thing is that people will always sit there and go, okay, their mic went off, but they adapted. and they figured it out and they moved beyond it and they weren't flummoxed by it. And they weren't all of a sudden, the entire thing was derailed because their mic was off for 30 seconds. And those are the people that people go, oh, okay, let's pay attention to them.
And it's never as long or as bad as what you think. Like, I know when I've sat in an audience when something goes wrong, and I've learned this through theater. When I would watch, my son would come back and say, oh my God. In fact, I used to go to this one play. I went to it every rehearsal. I was at everyone. It was right down, I think, to the dress rehearsal or one of the nights. I think it was the opening night. And a whole section of the play had been left out and I didn't even know. And I'm like, I've been seeing this so many times. I didn't miss it. They were horrified. Guess what? So I had to explain to myself. I said, guess what? You knew a mistake was made. No one else did, because in the overall context. And this applies to a lot of things that we're doing. We are in charge of our story oftentimes. So I wanted, let's leave right behind your head. It says, what's your story? Let's talk about that. And, I'm a recovering journalist. So I spent a chunk of my time in my career interviewing people. And I will say this, I would a lot of times call someone up, I'd go do an interview, and it was usually regular, everyday people. So not people with the polished stories. And they'd sometimes say, I don't know why you want to interview me. I don't really have much story. Well, by the end, I was like sitting there going, your story is phenomenal. So let's talk about that and maybe how often that's happened when you're interviewing people.
Every day. It's amazing to me how people don't take the credit for what they've done in their life. Yes, you may not have walked on the moon. Yes, you may not have solved world hunger, but you have probably changed somebody's life. Each and every single one of us at one part of our life have probably changed the life in some way, shape, or form of somebody else. We have made somebody's life better. We have made somebody's life easier. We've affected change. We've, made somebody a better person. We've made things easier for somebody. Every single one of us has a story to tell. And that story is something that is just part of us. And we may not think that it's a big deal because, oh yeah, well, I did it. Okay. Somebody was choking. I did the Heimlich maneuver. Okay. It's not that big a deal. But other people, oh my God, you saved somebody's life? Yeah, I just happened to be there. Well, tell me about it. Yeah. And the more we can sit there and say, okay, let's not get big-headed about it, but we do realize that we've all done things in our lives that are pretty incredible, in our own way, shape, or form. And sometimes it takes, a recovering journalist or a podcast or something like that to draw those stories out of people. But it's enabling people to feel comfortable. It's enabling them to feel proud of themselves. It's enabling them to allow them to sit up a little bit straighter and to put their chest out a little bit more and realize, hey, wait a second, I did do that. Okay, let me tell you about it. And that is a skill that comes from people who care about other people, that want to hear about other people's stories, that care about letting other people shine. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about being a journalist or being a really good podcaster or an interviewer or whatever, is it's never about you. It's never about you or how important I am or how smart I am or how good looking I am, because I'm not. It's about my guest, and it's about how do I enable my guest to be the best they can be and enable them to look good in front of their peers and be able to share this. Because if you make them feel good and you allow them to share the material, they will. And that's how stories spread. And
as you know, I work in manufacturing. So I would turn that around and say they need to let those stories flow out.
Absolutely.
Because they're holding back way too much. And instead, and I've seen this time and time again, often it's the simplest posts. It's posting something that you may have came across that day. It's maybe a problem you solved. It's the simplest things. And we all do this. I do it, right? I'm sure we all, at some point in our life, we overcomplicate things instead of simplifying it. So let's go to the comment section. We have some comments streaming in. So I want to do that. Let's go to our studio audience.
Go to the studio audience. Going to the newsroom. Okay, here we go.
And then we'll come back, because before some of the comments get ahead of what we talked about.
You betcha.
So we have, Brian Gignac is in the house. Good afternoon. Another
Hey,
Wacky
Brian.
Wednesday with Gail. That should be that's the outtakes, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
There we go. There's a subtext for you. Think another Wacky Wednesday with Gail.
Another
like
wacky, yes. I might have to do a post about that. Wacky Wednesday with Gail. Thank you, Brian. Brian does a stellar job at Cavalier Tool. He has a background in as an estimator and is moving over into the sales. Anyways, he's a busy guy. So
nice.
Thanks for stopping by, Brian. Now there's someone who, as busy as he is, does still work on the social media side of things and LinkedIn, and he's doing a really great job of showing up. So we have Inger here saying happy Wednesday. Gail and Ben. Hello, Inger.
Hello, Inger.
Hello, Inger. And we have, yes, Whitney. Thank you for bringing up another happy Wednesday and Star Wars Day. May the 4th. It is
definitely May the 4th. It's Star Wars Day today. May the 4th be with you.
And National Skilled Trades Day. It's a happening one. Do you know, sidebar, I just found out today, because of course, my curious mind, I have to sometimes say, where did the 4th, May the 4th be with you come from? Like, I understand May the 4th with you. Did you know it came from back in 1979? It was an ad that Margaret Thatcher's handlers had done after she had won. The Conservatives put out saying, "May the 4th be with you, Maggie." Maggie
awesome.
Thatcher. I just was like, that's where it came from. So, and I did a couple of like cross references to see, and that's like, those are the things that I just go, never knew that.
Those are great.
That and $3, you know, get your coffee, right? So this was, I think, when you're referencing what you need to do, the driving car, doing. And so he says, I'm like an old, it takes a bit of time to warm up. Yeah. I think we're all like that.
I think the older we get, I think it takes us longer to warm up. I think I got to let my engine run a couple of minutes before I throw it in a drive. I'm with you, Brian.
Whitney said, so I promote my co-workers for a social media series, and many of them say they aren't interesting. I find interviewing them fascinating. Whitney, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Usually the people who say they have the least interesting are often the most interesting. Those are the people standing back. That's why I try to get to those people, because they are interesting. I love that. It's so important to positively impact the lives of others. And that is something. Inger is the queen of Ubuntu. She talks about that and how she is also the networking ninja. So, and she has her own spin on that, which is really cool.
Awesome.
I'd love to hear more of this, Whitney. Could we please meet in a call something? Okay, there we go. We have
there we go. We've done our networking for the day.
We've done our network. Check that off the list. We have a LinkedIn user. I'm not sure who this is. Say, wish someone a day as wonderful or fabulous as they are, and you will see their shock. Continue to do it, and you see that it impacts the mindset. We do amazing things. Oh my goodness. This is so true. Showing appreciation, saying thank you, have a great day. It is amazing when we hear those That's things. Right. They mean a lot, because I often say too, sometimes we focus on what went wrong. And I look at, whether you've hired someone or you're working with someone and they do 10 things and they may do 8 things right and 2 things wrong. But sometimes the focus,
everybody focuses on those 2 things. We do that ourselves. I mean, we do 9 amazing things, and one thing we slip on. What do we focus on? We focus on that one thing.
Yeah. It's a bit of, you know what, that's one thing I find is that really getting into that mindset, and it really, you need to get out of it again. That's just like, it's very important. So, David Chrysler's in this. David, the king of process. He is the process king. Great to join in the conversation. David is, I don't know if you've met him, Ben, but
no, we haven't met yet.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys need to meet. David is one of those people you meet in life that just like, he knows how to just bring it right down, process, simplify things. And it almost seems like, come on, really?
But you know what? It's a real skill to be able to take something that's complex and make it understandable by everybody. And that's something that people who have that skill are in very much demand, because as you said before, people try to overcomplicate things. We take things that should be simple, things that should be easy, things that should be understandable, and we attach acronyms to them and, inside talk and layers of complexity, trying to save our own jobs or trying to, make ourselves look important, where in the end, what it's about is, can I solve the problem? And can I make this understandable to the greater number of people to be able to have them understand, oh, okay, I get it. This is why I should do business with you.
And that's what we're going to go back to that when we go through these comments. I want to circle back on that idea about what you do in your podcast and you're interviewing
Yeah.
people, because that's really key. So we have a few more things happening here. I'm just going to zip through some of these because there some networking going on here. So just to give you an idea of what's happening as we're talking, we have people back and forth saying, hey, we have Brian saying hi to David. And then, LinkedIn user Diane By. Oh, thanks, Deanne. I'm not sure if it's Diane or Deanne. So thank you for stopping by. Oh, and Whitney's dropping another gem here. It's also Teacher Appreciation this week.
There we go. It's a busy week.
Teachers, I have such compassion for teachers. That is one job I think I could say I do not want to do. I could not do. I cannot imagine being in a classroom with like 20 to 30 kids, like
a horse, a whip, a chair, and a gun. I think that's the only way you could. I would love to teach grad school. I love teaching I teach third and fourth year university students.
Fourth year group.
They're fun. Grad students are fun.
Yes.
High school students, I have the greatest appreciation for the people that can sit there and interrelate with high school students and not only get them, but get them passionate about whatever subject it is. These people I bow down to, because those are the amazing people. Those are the people that are truly changing lives and building the next generation. So hats off to great teachers.
Yes. And David said, definitely. Oh, you're too kind. He said, would love to connect. Yes, you too. And
absolutely, David.
Now this is on topics because I'm not that smart. That's my wife's department. Oh, you better screenshot this and send it to her, David. That's like, I think that's brownie points for that.
There we go.
That's someone he is being much too humble, because he's quite brilliant how his brain thinks. Because I always said simple is not easy.
No.
And it's often like when I liken it to yoga, when I'm doing a yin yoga class, which is very slow moving. It is often more difficult than fast, because you have to hold poses longer. It involves patience. It involves a different way of also you have to learn to hold the pose without pushing too much. So yeah.
What was the quote? It says, if I had the time, I would have written a shorter piece.
Yes. And it's like, I think it was referencing a letter. Someone had written this long letter, said, if I had more time, I would have written. So it's probably, I don't know. See,
I
now
can't remember who the author is.
origin.
If somebody has it, write it in the comments. But it's really to write well, to write concise, to write, so it's utilizing every single word takes a lot of effort.
Well, that's what I said. If someone says write 2,000 words, you can do that very quickly. If they then say they want the same, but in 500, and that's what I find what challenged me, like Twitter and, writing in social media. This is only social media people that are in this world understand why it takes so long to do social media posts, because you have to take all these ideas, you have to edit it down, then you got to tag, but it's mostly about, that's what Twitter has really helped me, especially, is that just you have to take a concept and cut to fit it into that space and still get it in one tweet as opposed to a thread.
And it's luxury now that we have 288 characters where we used to have only 144. So, I almost felt verbose when I first went from 144 to 288 characters. And what do you get? 1,299 characters in LinkedIn. So there you go. Just to be the real nerd about this.
And what I will say, this is a good point to make right now, is that every social media platform is different. You can do something. Well, we were just talking about, you just got off a 10-minute podcast, which is very different than my show. And I would say they're just different. It's not one's better, one's worse. And the same thing with a thread on Twitter, a short tweet. LinkedIn is long posts serve a purpose, shorter post also a purpose. So, okay, we have Brian. Oh, look at Brian Gignac is popping in with dropping a gem of the day here, which is the French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal famously wrote, I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time.
There we go. It was Pascal. Thank you, Brian.
Mic drop moment right there. I knew it was something to do with the letter. So thank you, Brian, for saving me having to.
Thank God for people with Google. I appreciate that. There you go. Gotta love
Brian,
Google.
that's amazing. I love, and you know what? More people, that's something, when I was managing people, I said, more people need to realize you can find an answer on on Google. So we had a bit more chatter back and forth about people teaching and that. But so thank you, everybody. Whitney, and I guess Dan, thank you all for dropping the comments. So we'll be back. So keep them coming if you have any questions. So because we're going to now get into more about podcasts, a bit of the how-tos, a bit of some highlights from Ben's podcast. So if you have any questions about podcasting, drop them in and you have opportunity. You have, the expert here that can answer it. So let's go to that question about some highlights from some of the shows you did where people told their story, told their personal brand, and it had an impact, whether with you, with others, and any surprises. So I'm going to let you if there's any that stand out for you.
Well, recently, probably one of the most impactful, actually two of the most impactful ones were the one I did this week. And if you have a chance, go to YourLIVINGBrand.live and look at the podcast with Hobie Wedler. Hobie is a PhD in chemistry. He's got a TEDx. He helps people in experiential marketing, and he is 100% blind. This man is blind from birth. He does not let it stop him in any way, shape, or form. He is incredible. He's got an incredible view on life. And he sits there and goes, okay, we have 5 senses. Why are we so reliant on sight? It says there's nothing wrong with sight. It would give us other advantages. But here's the thing. If you sit there and go, we've got sound, we got sight, we got taste, we got touch, we have all these different senses. Why are we not utilizing all 5 of our senses to be able to move forward? The other podcast that I did is I just interviewed Tom Ziglar. Now, you may know the name Ziglar, Zig Ziglar. This is his son. I just interviewed Tom Ziglar. And the one thing I talked to him about was, what was it like growing up in Zig's shadow? What was it like being the son of Zig? Because we sit there and go, all right, we all, or at least those of us who are Zig fans, had the set of tapes. I probably had 3 sets of them because I probably broke them because I listened to them so much, read the books, listened to the quotes, attended the workshops and the seminars. But what is it like having dinner with the man? What was it like growing up and having him as a father? And the story is just incredible. And it's the insights about who he is, and not only his dad, but also his mom as well. And how incredible she was to be able to make sure she could take care of the family while Zig was off being Zig. And, he realized when he got home who the boss really was. And, he called her the redhead. And it was, and that's what it was. And she was just this incredible woman that, made sure that everything was taken care of so he could go off and do the things that he did. So those are, this show is 300 episodes deep. Yeah. We're 5 years, 300 episodes deep. I've been podcasting for 10 years, but in terms of a catalog, there is some incredible, I've interviewed Seth Godin. I've interviewed Dr. Ivan Meisner, who started BNI. I've started Cody Bateman, who started Send Out Cards. Bob Berg, who wrote the Go Givers series. His partner in crime, John Mann. I've been blessed to be able to interview some incredible people and be able to hear their stories and their insights. And, and for me, it's every week it's a masterclass. And I get these people that come on my show and I get to ask them the questions that I want to hear and my audience wants to hear. And I get to learn. And that's probably what I love about the show the most. And
we talked a bit about this earlier, that like the value of podcasting. So there is the value of listening to them. Mm-hmm. We talked also about my favorite one, other than yours, of course. Hidden Brain is one of my number one. For me, it has changed how I can see the world as well. Mm-hmm. I also talk a lot about something called it's a Walt Whitman quote that became popular on the Ted Lasso show. And there's a whole dart scene. So if anyone wants to know where this
that was brilliant.
The dart scene on Ted Lasso, and it said, be curious, not judgmental. Mm-hmm. And the interview you did this week with was his name Kobe?
Hobie.
Hobie. One of the things that was really remarkable for me was when he said, if he could be given the gift of sight, he would kind of say no to it. And when you listen to him explaining the why, we make so many judgments about, how people show up in the world when we really need to sometimes step back and get more curious and learn more. So, so there's that value of, listening to podcasts, learning, expanding our horizons. Let's also shift over a little bit now to people who may want to do a podcast, who are doing a podcast right now. Number one, I have to say, kudos to you. 300 plus podcasts. That is phenomenal, because maybe people don't know, the stat is that people start a podcast, and I think majority are under, they stop.
Here's the statistics.
Okay.
90% of podcasts fail or go off the air in 10 episodes or less. Of the millions of podcasts that are out there, and I think there's somewhere around 4 million podcasts out there today, 90% of them never make it past 10 episodes. Now, those include, you have the episode series, like you have things like Renegades Born in the USA, which is Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. If you are a fan, get that one. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's 8 or 10 episodes, and it will never be more than 8 or 10 episodes, because that's the story that they wanted to tell, and they tell it extremely well. And there is, a lot of episodic podcasts where people say, look, I did it for this particular reason. This is what it's going to be, and that's it. But there is an enormous amount of people out there that start a podcast with very little understanding of how much work it is, what the expectations are of creating a podcast. And they all think that if I start a podcast, everybody's going to listen from day one. I'm going to be instantly famous. It's going to make me money right off the bat. And, and this is going to be easy. And it's none of those. Podcasting is long tail marketing. I did not get the type of benefit that I wanted out of my podcast probably somewhere between year 2 and year 3. So I'm over 100 episodes into the show before I started getting the type of results that I wanted, in terms of the guests that I wanted, the referrals that I wanted, the business that I wanted, the notoriety that I wanted. None of that came probably into year 3. And that is, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of investment in terms of time and money. It's a lot of upskilling, but it definitely has the ROI if you're willing to understand why you're creating the show, who you're creating the show for, what you want to get out of the show, and be able to build something that's for your audience, not for your own ego trip.
I want to say, Ben, what you just said would also apply to the world I'm in when it comes to social media, doing live shows, the exact same thing. And like you said earlier, it's also people that run marathons, people that do other things. Like, you don't just out of the gate go run a marathon. Well, if you do, you're probably going to end up with some.
You're going to have heat exhaustion by about mile 12.
And,
you're going to be in the ambulance by mile 13. Okay.
And you may come in last, but here's the thing that I would say applies to what you just said, also applies to in the manufacturing world for people starting into social media, people starting into LinkedIn. Now, Ingers, who's in the studio on today, does work. She works with me, but she also works with people on getting their coaching around LinkedIn. And like anything, sometimes you need a little hand-holding. You need some accountability. You need someone to just kind of get your page optimized, do all of those things. And just like what you're doing with you help people also develop podcasts or host them. So maybe we'll talk about that if someone is interested in doing a podcast and wants it to be part of their brand, let's start with what's a good place to start?
Okay. Here's a good place to start. I wrote a free ebook, and I wrote it in last year, 2021. If you go to yourbrandmarketing.com/ebooks and you scroll down, because there's free copies of my 2 books, chapters of my 2 books. there, but if you keep scrolling down, you're going to see 9 ebooks in a period. On the left-hand side, there's a green cover, and it's basically podcasts for people just starting. And that's a great place for people to start. It's, you know, a 25 or 30 page ebook that has a lot of information on it. Here's the thing. YouTube is a phenomenal thing. It can overwhelm you. It can confuse the heck out of you. It can, you know, it can just overwhelm you more than anything. There is more free information out there than you care to imagine. The best thing you can do is find a good course and take a good course. You know, I've got one on my website. You know, there's other people that have other courses out there, but it's if you sit there and go, there are courses out there that you can take that will give you all the information or a lot of the information that you need just to get started, because it's not just equipment. You know, yes, okay, you need a microphone, you need headphones, you might need a little bit of lights, you need some basic equipment. That's just table stakes, and you don't have to spend a ton of money. You really don't. Strategy is the big thing. You need to develop a strategy. Why am I creating a podcast in the first place? What is this podcast going to be on? Am I going to do it myself? Am I going to do it with a guest? Am I going to have a co-host? You know, is it going to be a weekly podcast? Is it going to be a daily podcast? Is it going to be a monthly podcast? But you need to sit there and say, whatever you commit to, 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning, hell or high water, the next episode better be up and ready to go. You know, and that's what it is, because it's that consistency that makes people come back week after week after week. It's that library of stuff where people can sit there and say, oh, I'm getting a twitch. It must be Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Ben's podcast is about to drop again. Great. And we know that. And people start relying on it, and they start, you know, being able to expect it, and they want to share it because they know that that this is the material that's going to be coming out. The other thing is to stay on brand. You need to stay on brand. This is what we talk about. You can't sit there and say, we're going to talk about 1957 Chevys on this podcast, and then all of a sudden start talking about Fords. You know, you're a 57 Chevy, you know, podcast. That's it. That's what you talk about. You want to talk about fly fishing in the Pacific Northwest? You talk about fly fishing in the Pacific Northwest. The more you can niche down, the more you can sit there and say, stay on brand, stay on message. This is what my audience expects. They expect me to talk about this. They expect me to bring guests in that are going to teach me about this. They expect me to be about this length and time. So you can't have some episodes that are 10 minutes and others that are an hour and 20 minutes. You need to say, okay, my shows are roughly around 35 minutes. Sometimes they're 32, sometimes they're 40, but they're never an hour. And when you do that, that's how you build an audience. That's how you get people who want to come back, who want to listen, who want to share, who want to get involved with you on social media, who want to talk to you about the business that you're in, and be able to sit there and say, okay, now that I know, like, and trust you, how do we do business together?
You know, the idea of consistency is so key. I often suggest to people, even on social media, whatever you do, do it. If you're going to post a blog, post a blog once a month, post a blog once a week, post a blog every 2 months, but whatever you do, make sure you set those timelines. And that's a bit of a game changer if you can really get to that point. And you set up a process, as David Chrysler would say.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to have that. You got to have that process.
You got to have the process. Yes. And okay, let's go back. We have some more comments coming in.
Sure.
So let's just see where we left off. So David already said he can't. So that's your podcast on his playlist. So that's, and that's a crazy stat. That was the one about how 90%, and that is true. I know, like a lot of things, people will out of the gate, even on other aspects of social media, they want to start on like 5 platforms, and I have to get them off that and say, pick one,
pick a lane,
pick a lane, pick your website and maybe one other platform, and then really do that well. And unless, like, in our world or in my world, like, I'm on a few different ones because a lot of that's testing, and, you know, it's a different, I have a different goal though. Right. So,
but the difference is your job is to teach people how to use social media. So
Right.
for you to only be on Snapchat or to
Yeah.
only be on Pinterest sits there and sets you, unless you want to be the Pinterest queen or the Snapchat
Right.
queen and just say, listen, I only teach people about how to be famous on Snapchat.
Yeah.
That's a moniker. But if you're going
Yeah.
to sit there and say, I want to teach you how for you to shine and tell your story. Okay, you're better off being on LinkedIn. You're better off being on Snapchat.
Mhm.
You're better off being on Twitter. You're better off being on Pinterest and being able to advise people because you've been there and you've played with
Yeah.
all those platforms. That makes a big difference.
It's all about learning. And the reason I do dabble in a few different ones is I need to know what to recommend. You're right. That's exactly it. Where is the best place? Because some people want, and often they'll say, "Oh, I heard Instagram is really good." Well, really good for what? Right? Like it's like, this pen is really good, but it's not a pencil, it's not a marker, it's not so you
That's right.
have to kind
And
of
it does
know.
it right in space.
And that's right. That's a good one too. So we have, yeah. So yeah, especially when you consider how many podcasts. Yes, that is. And I didn't know that twist you said about those like series, right? So that's just taking that
Absolutely.
into account. But still, most of them don't last past the 9 or 10
Yeah.
because it's like anything, you can jump into something and then next thing you realize, oh, this is a lot more work. Here is something Whitney said, as Nigel Packer. Now I know Nigel Packer from some networking on USA
Yeah.
Manufacturing. He says everything is a long game. You know what? I got to say that's probably a lot of truth to that. That wherever you're building, especially on any relationship, it's usually a long game. It's not like snap your fingers.
But the problem is we've built a society that's built on instantaneous gratification, whether it's the Snapchat generation or the text-based generation or companies that base themselves on weekly, monthly, or quarterly sales. Everything is based on what have you done for me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not on where is our business going to be in a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's how do we get sales now? And we'll worry about later. And I think that when you're dealing with marketing, when you're dealing with branding, when you're dealing with communication, you need to get out of what's the ROI on this on Tuesday, because there may be no ROI on Tuesday. It might be 50 Tuesdays down the road before the right person actually listens to the podcast and goes, oh, hang on, let me now get in touch with you. And I think that we need to understand that as organizations, that we can't just look at it and say, oh my God, we're spending $5,000 a quarter on our podcast. Where's the ROI this quarter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then that is also so important when you're looking at developing that brand, a personal brand in particular. I just had something happen to me recently where someone came up to me. This person knew me well from my Twitter, because I've been doing Twitter quite a while, and it's just, and I'm pretty consistent with it. And she knew all about me. She was talking about me, and I was like, and it's from an organization that I was like, wow. And it turns out I actually am following her back, but I didn't. She would have walked by me in the street. I wouldn't have known her. I didn't know any, because she's more of the lurker. So she's watching, but she knew me very clearly. She knew a lot about me. So that's what we don't always see too, because and I know Inger just talked about this, we have to get past just the vanity metrics as well as yes, impressions are important. Yes, engagement is important, but there's a lot of lurkers out there that are watching you. You don't even know. It's almost like the cameras everywhere around us now, right? Cameras are everywhere. People are out there on social media watching, listening, and we may not, and they never hit the like button. They never hit the impression, but they know much about us. So,
well, and when we look at it and sit there and say, it could be that they're looking at us on 6 or 7 different mediums and saying, is there consistency here? Are they being consistent across medium? Is the brand consistent? Is the message consistent? Is the customer experience the same? And people will sit there and go, you're right. I've had people come up to me and say, you know what? I've been listening to your podcast now for 8 months. I'd really like you to come and talk to us. Hadn't a clue. As you said, fairly large company, vice president level of this person has been listening to my podcast for 8 months. I hadn't got a clue. They had never reached out to me, never liked anything, never shared anything. But I was on their podcast list, and they said, I listened to every single episode you put out because I gained something from everyone. And I was honored. But until that person reached out for me, I wouldn't have had a clue.
No. And that is where it's about a mind shift of looking at, not only marketing, but social media as part of that long game, making connections, building relationships. And you may not get anything from that relationship, maybe never, but you may also, it may be a year down the road, or they may tell someone else about you. So it's very much, the web. There's a reason for that, because it does reach out and connects up people. I do want to say that David did drop the link for your ebook. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Glad to have people in the audience like this that are helping us. Thank you, David. And he wrote, thanks for the resource and insights for sharing, Ben. This is incredible. Yes, I knew when I was having Ben on my show, I was like, Ben, and again, please, everyone, go check out his podcast, because you will be, it is really right up there now with my hidden brain one, because, you have such a range of people. And I love when I can, for me, I'm always challenging how I see the world. And I want to be able to be less judgmental, because I talk about it, and, we're all, hey, I'm judgmental about things. I do those things. There was something recently, I was judging someone about something, and then I just found out the insights, and I was like, oh, and how they're having success. I was kind of going, oh, look what they're doing in my head. Right. And I was talking to someone, and David, I think you know what I'm talking about. But I had this idea in my head. And then when I heard the insights and how much success, I was like, oh, well, that knocked me off my high horse, didn't it? So
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there are people out there that are wildly successful. I look at their business plan. I look at their strategy. I go, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, but it works for them and it works for their audience. So who am I to say that I'm right or they're wrong? They're making a ton of money. They've got, loyal clients. They've got a business out there that I sit there going, I have no idea how this thing makes money, but it is. And it's doing it consistently, and they're employing people, and they're taking care of families, and they're paying health benefits and all sorts of things. So, we can't be judgmental. We have to sit there and say, okay, what is it that I'm not either understanding, or what is it that they're doing that I just don't understand?
Yes. And I will say, I think this applies to so many things in our world right now, because the world is changing. We don't know. Sometimes when we think we know everything. And I often tell this story. When I was in high school, I was on the debating team. Sure, no one's surprised, but I was on the debating team. And one of the things we had to do, we'd go to a debate, and our teacher made us prepare for both sides. And
of course, absolutely.
There was one debate you didn't know which side you're debating until you showed up. And then it was like, they said, okay, you're going against. So you had to be prepared. That was probably the best experience for me, because once you're forced to look at things from another perspective and have to then stand up. And of course, I'm a little competitive, so I want to win. And when you're driven to win and you're driven to go dig, and I purposely do that about a few issues in our society right now. I force myself to go, like, really, if I think I'm here on this issue, I force myself to say, what if I had to go make an argument? And I tell you, it makes you see things differently. And that's kind of like, a lot of things when we're looking at, how we're using our own social media. It's just, we sometimes have to keep in check, a little bit open-mindedness at times. So,
well, I mean, the thing with social media and the way the algorithms work is they surround us with people who think like we do.
Yes.
Who think that we're wonderful, that believe in the same things that we do. And, sometimes you need to go out there looking for things that are beyond your scope, and sit there and go, okay, I want to find out more about this, and start looking at the hashtags, or looking at podcasts, or, there are ultra right-wing podcasts out there, just like there's ultra left-wing podcasts out there. There's podcasts for all different sorts of things. If you're a Niners fan, go listen to a Packers podcast. There's all sorts of things that could make you sit there and go, I never thought of it that way before. Yeah. And that's what I try to do week and every week. I mean, when I'm doing my podcast, I know the first question I'm going to ask somebody, and I know the last question I'm going to ask somebody.
Yep.
And between that, it's a discussion. It's a conversation. It's a, wait a second, what did you mean by that? And yeah, I do a little bit of research on people, but I don't want to know so much about them that I lead to assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes being underprepared in these situations have surprised me and given me far better podcasts. They go, oh, okay, I know what they're going to say about this. And I think that we all need to, whether it's within our social media, whether it's podcasts, whether it's in our places of business, sit there and say, okay, why are they thinking the way that they're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they acting the way they're thinking? What's their motivation? Simon Sinek had a wonderful thing where he talked about managers versus leaders. And this is, I'll always remember this, where, a person is late 5 days in a row. And the manager goes up to the person and says, look, you've been late 5 days in a row. Late day number 6, I'm going to have to write you up.
Mm-hmm.
And the leader comes up to that same person and says, look, you've been late 5 days in a row. Is everything okay? And we need to be able to look beyond how we perceive and our biases and our thought patterns and sit there and say, okay, what's leading this person to act the way they are?
Mm-hmm.
What is their internal motivations? What's the backstory that's putting their back up against the wall?
Yeah.
And whether it's social media, whether it's in the office, whether it's a podcast, whether it's interacting with our own families or clients, we need to realize that every single person comes to the table wherever they are with their own hopes, wants, fears, desires, and aspirations. And the more we can be curious about the other people, the more curious they're going to be about us.
That is so true. And I want anybody's listening today. I was just thinking as you were talking that if anyone has a favorite podcast that maybe challenges some assumptions or views, please drop them in. I will say this, especially as a recovering journalist, and I know this is a bit of a hot button topic, maybe for some, but I heard a lot of controversy about the Joe Rogan podcast. So that is one that I decided to spend some time listening to. And I will say this, he has very long form. Some of his
3 hours, some of them are 3 hours long. Yeah.
I know if you want to hear a conversation and really get into the depth of some topics. And that's why I was kind of saddened by a lot of the, wanting to ban him and everything. It's like, I tell you, I've listened to now some of his podcasts and I'm like, I have learned so much more just from different perspectives. So that's what I find fast about podcasts. You're kind of like eavesdropping in on these conversations. So that's very cool. So.
Yeah. Either you like his bombastic viewpoints or you don't. It doesn't matter. But whether Larry King was your guy or Joe Rogan is your guy or somewhere in between, the people that can sit there and dive deep into a subject and dive deep and explore it from a whole bunch of different views. That's why I got excited about your show as an hour long, because being an hour long, we can actually dive into some topics and we can actually, take a little bit of meat off the bone, where sometimes when you have a shorter podcast, it's a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Okay, here's one point, talk about it, you're done. Thank you very much. On with your day, which can be great if you just want to gain one piece of information. If I just need information on this, 10 minutes, I get that, good. Now I can move on with my day. But with a longer podcast, it gives you the power to actually say, okay, what did you mean by that? And get into the point.
And I also, what I do is a little different, is that I don't have set questions, because as a reporter, I used to, don't get me wrong, I had some questions here. I had some things. Of
course.
But what happens is I don't want to lose, the value of if you're talking about something really interesting, I'm okay, on to the next question. And I find a lot of times when I'm listening to some interviews, that tends to happen sometimes, is that they stop and you're like, no, stay on that topic. It was exciting, right? So
please, if you're going to start your own podcast, do not these are my 5 questions. I'm going to ask every single guest these 5 questions, and that's my podcast. Please don't do that, because after 3 episodes, people will stop caring.
Yeah. No, I think it's about interaction. I'm all about engagement. So I like to, and I really now find myself trying to do more of that on social. But we're kind of wrapping up. We still I have many more things to ask.
I know we could talk another hour, but we're not going to. I understand that.
There's certain guests I'm going to say, certain point down the road, I'll probably swing back and we'll focus on. But we did talk about social media. Now, transferable skills. I think what I could say about your transferable skills is because you've done all this work in your background in the with your uncles, watching them in theater. That's a great skill to see that. And then, diving in with companies, working on the podcast, and of course, you could do public speaking, and you have done public speaking. So
all
I
around
can
the
see where
world.
people
Yes.
say, just like you're doing today, come in and drop some of these gems. And we need more of that. We need people to really look at what their transferable skills are.
Transferable skills are important because you're not your job title. I don't care who you are in your life. You're not your job title. What are you passionate about? What do you believe in? What are the things that interest you? What are the things that get you up in the morning? What are the things that because yes, I've been in the manufacturing business for 35 years, but during those 35 years, what are the skills that you've acquired? Hopefully you haven't been on the same press for 35 years. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But even if you have, that press has probably changed. How you do work has changed. The innovation have changed, and you've learned things along the way. So we need to sit there and say, okay, what have I learned along the way that's going to enable other people to be better off and learn from the experience that I've had and not fall down the holes that I've fallen down? And it may be simple things. You may not have a year's worth of podcast episodes, but you may just sit there and say, you know what? I want to talk to different people about the holes that they've been down and compare it. So it's finding out what's your jam and how can you take the things that you've learned and the arrows that you've ended up putting in your quiver and make them and hunt with those.
That is wonderful. That is a really great way to look at how to, again, go back to sharing your story, because sometimes those, like you said, innovation, that's key too. What are things that have maybe changed in your job, and how can you be in service to others? Because when you're posting, the more that you can serve others by sharing a tip, sharing an idea, very key. I will go back to say you're not your title, except I think I am my title now. Chief Curiosity Officer. That may be
There you
the
go.
title that I really took me a long time to earn that one.
Absolutely. I mean, you wear it well, but when it comes to sharing on social media, everybody's got something to share. Even if you just take something that someone else has written within your company, within your organization, something like that, and say, I read this article and this is what I gleaned out of it, and I want to share this because it doesn't always have to be your original content. But if you're going to share stuff, don't just post a cartoon and go, hey, that was funny. Post that cartoon and say, I like this cartoon because of this, and this is what it made me think about. What do you think? Yep. And because of that, you're going to start the conversation. And it's all about using whatever post you're doing. It's not just drop it and forget about it. It's dropping it and saying, okay, now I'm going to leave a trail of breadcrumbs so other people can sit there and say, oh, yeah, I should say something about this. Oh, yeah, that relates to my experience. Oh, I understand exactly what they're talking about. And the more you can dive into the comments and be part of the conversation, the bigger your following can be and the more valuable you become to other people.
And you can also take information. No, I was inspired. I saw something Dan Bigger wrote about LinkedIn, again, about being in service to others. And that got me thinking about our show. So I posted, basically, I just took some from his and I took from you. And I posted, that post is doing phenomenally well. Got all this engagement. People are commenting. And really, I just took other ideas and credit people. That's also important. But
very
I did
important.
Credit Dan back to that. Now, we're just coming to the top of the hour. So I'm going to go over to comments. And while I'm doing that, I want you to think about how you exercise your curious mind. And that's how we usually end the show, is talk about how you exercise your curious mind. But let's go back, and we have, so Inger's dropped a few comments saying, love that, stay on brand, very key. So true, Ben. People expecting, this is very true. We do expect, the quick and in and out, and yet we should really be looking at, a different style of eating, so we say. Oh yeah, and so Inger says, yes, there are many who don't like or comment on my post, but send me private message about it. That's another opportunity.
There you
go. A lot of times people may do that. Be curious, not judgmental. That's one of Inger and I, we do love that. one. And Whitney's dropping some podcasts. Sharon
There you
said
go.
so. We can do hard things and pantsuit. Ooh, okay, Whitney, thank you.
Pantsuit politics. Okay, I may have to look at that.
Yeah, we can do hard things. Yeah. Thank you everyone for all of the comments, the engaging today. That's exciting. So Ben, how do you exercise your curious mind?
I exercise my curious mind by when I'm out walking, playing golf, interacting with people, to sit there and say, okay, what am I not seeing? What am I seeing but I'm not looking at? Where can I put my focus that I normally wouldn't? And realizing and say, how can I look at things from different angles? And whether that be mentally or physically or whatever, to be able to sit there and say, okay, if I can look at something from a different angle or a different point of view or understand things differently by getting a viewpoint that I hadn't heard before, my life is richer. And I think that's really where that's okay. That's what we really need is to sit there and say, okay, what am I missing? There's a guy by the name of Bryce Hoffman that talks about red team thinking. And red team thinking is literally saying, okay, what if all the data that I've collected is wrong, or what if I've collected the wrong data? And what if all the information that I have leads me to the wrong conclusion? And that's coming up on my podcast at the end of June. And that was a phenomenal interview that we just did. And you need to sit there and say, how do we take a look at our world and not assume that everything that we know to be correct, there's the air quotes going up, is actually correct? Or is it just what we believe? Do we know it, or do we just believe it?
The old confirmation bias that you're going to, and this happens a lot, as you said, on social media. And I know on TikTok, it's really interesting because you don't even have to like or follow something, but it's all on viewing time. So you get more content, whatever you're watching more of. I learned a lot from my son about TikTok, and that there is a great podcast for anyone that really wants to delve into the history of TikTok. Because when people say it's stupid, I go, oh, no, it is not stupid. I mean, you can disagree with the history of it, but where it started, but how it was created. Ben, this podcast, I couldn't stop listening. And it was like a series, and I kind of binge listened to the series because it was jaw-dropping, interesting of how it was built and the strategy behind, like, wow. If you want to learn about strategy, that is that's a platform that, a lot of the ones come from that. Wow. Whew. Ben, this has
been a marathon. I love this.
This has been amazing. So much. And yes, I have so many more questions. This often happens in my interviews, but rather than barreling through, 20 questions, I'm really glad that we got to have this pace. And I think based on the comments that people really also enjoyed hearing your insights and learning about the power of podcasts. And you have lots of information on your website. I encourage people. I think you can even book a meeting with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can book a meeting with me. I'll give everybody 30 free minutes to talk strategy. If you've got a situation where you need to sit there and say, okay, we're not really sure, but we need to sit there and say, can we work together? Is there a way for us to figure this out? I'll give everybody 30 minutes for free just to be able to go, all right, let's see where you are. Where do you want to be? And let's see, how committed are you to making that change?
That's great. I find I also do meetings with people because I have no charge, because I also learn from that. It's a bit like teaching, right? We often learn when we're in that other role. So it's a great way to be. You're also podcast hosts, and we have we can drop more of these things. I think some of these things are in the comments. So we'll make sure we drop more of those in there.
Exactly. If you go to yourbrandmarketing.com, everything is there, including link to me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I spend far more time on LinkedIn than Twitter. I'll be perfectly honest about it.
Yep.
But if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. But please tell me that you were introduced to me through Gail, so I know where it came from. Yep. If people just hit the connect button, sometimes I connect, sometimes I don't. It all depends on who the person is. So if you found me through this show, please say I found you through Gail. I'm more than happy to connect with people and find out more about them.
That's one last tip. I just want to add the power of doing that. I have met amazing people because I said, I listened to a podcast. I met you here, listened to and here's what I learned from you. Oh my God. I've met amazing people. So I strongly encourage everyone, if you want to grow your LinkedIn and meet more people, and you say, I want to meet whoever, even in your industry, go and see if they've been on a podcast or even comment on a previous show or a previous post.
And please don't just hit the connect button.
Yeah.
Just try it, because you know what? Most people will look at it and go, I don't know this person.
Yeah.
I have no idea who this person is. I have no idea why I should connect with this person.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. I'm going to have you go in the green room and I will be there shortly.
Awesome, Gail. Thank you. Thank to everybody who chimed in. Looking forward to getting to know everybody. And if I can help you communicate more effectively, please reach out.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. See you soon. Oh, wow. You know what? Ben is one of those people you meet in the world that after you talk to him, you just feel lighter. You feel more energized. And I have to say, I always feel smarter after talking to Ben, just because he provides so much insights. And I tell you, even if you listen to some of his podcasts, you will come away with a very different perspective on a lot of things that you may not have even thought about before. So I encourage you to check him out. Take him up on that 30-minute offer. I would strongly encourage you to do that. And if you want to find me to talk further, you can find me on most social media platforms, obviously here on LinkedIn. Please, if you're not connected with me, send a message. And if you did hear about me through this show, please make notice of that, or make note of that when you send off the connection request. And I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram as GailNow1. Most other platforms, I'm there as GailNow. Also, all previous shows are on my YouTube channel. So if you want to catch up and hear some of these shows, or even watch this show again, that's a good place to go. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. And remember that when you sign up and suit up, you can show up. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.